Hello, I'm Ugly Kid, your host of Face Western Fallout. So, TLDR for this whole video is that Bethesda is going for something entirely different than what the original team was going for, and that's it. Many people are unable to articulate this point so succinctly, and then they instead focus on the finer details to systematically tear down each Bethesda title. And I agree with those people, but it doesn't always add to the larger discussion. Bethesda fans won't hear these criticisms and consider them. Typically, it will just come off as pretentious, and they'll completely disregard your whole take. In this video, I'm intending to respectfully explain why people like me prefer the classic games in New Vegas over the Bethesda-made titles. I'm not anticipating I'm going to change anybody's mind, but I'm hoping to at least give Bethesda fans perspective. Another preface before getting into the meat of this video is that I actually started with Fallout Shelter. That was my first ever Fallout game. Then Fallout 4, which might be my most played game in the franchise. For now. Most of my Fallout 4 playtime is on Xbox, just to be clear. Anyways, after that, I played Fallout 3, then I pre-ordered Fallout 76 Tricentennial Edition, and I really like these games. But then I got a laptop, and the first thing I ever bought was the Fallout Classic Trilogy Pack. I've yet to finish Tactics, but otherwise I played the shit out of these games. And some of my Fallout 1 playtime isn't even logged because of Fallout 2. And lastly, I played New Vegas. Yup, that was my last game of the series, yet it's my most played on Steam. So you've probably noticed, I used to be like one of you. Then I went down the pipeline, and I've since come to respect what the original team's vision was over the Bethesda vision. Now, I shall tell you why. So you may be asking, how exactly are these titles so different from each other? Well, I'll tell you. So there are the obvious differences like the gameplay and the RPG elements, however my main focus will be on the writing. Personally, I can overlook the gameplay as long as the writing is on point. Now the Black Isle team, example Black Isle is sitting in this game for Fallout games, it's largely the same people that Fallout 1, 2, and Vegas. We're interested in writing expansive settings with deep themes and layered characters. As well as this, every quest and dialogue choice has many different routes and paths you can take which lead to completely different outcomes. Now I could cherry pick examples, but instead I'd like to focus on the larger whole. Also, pointing out differences will be most of this video. In California, before the TV show, there was a fully fledged nation known as the NCR. They had bureaucracy, military, employment, taxes, correctional facilities, and much more. It resembled a realistic government despite taking place in a wacky setting. On the East Coast, there used to be a Commonwealth government, but for whatever reason, the Institute chose to destroy them. When you arrive to the Commonwealth, there isn't any government. Instead, there are 2 major cities and a couple shanty towns. Even the major factions aren't really governments. You have a spy organization, a science organization, a military organization, and one dude from a militia that you control. In the Capital Wasteland, it's much the same story, but theoretically after Broken Steel, the Brotherhood has established some sort of control in the region. And you may have noticed something there. Before Fallout 4 takes place, there was a government in the region. After Fallout 3 takes place, there could be a government, but we never actually get to experience these governments in action. We only experience ruins and small organizations. Now sure, government is just one part of the Black Isle series. This isn't entirely game-changing. I mean, in Fallout 1, there is no central government, and the Mojave is a frontier wasteland. However, there's still civilization in these regions. The Hub, Boneyard, Junktown, Vegas Strip are all controlled with rules and regulations. Each one has some sort of overseeing power like a mayor or a corporation, and they're fully fledged cities, not just shanty towns. This applies to all locations in 1-2 New Vegas. Each location has a supply of food, water, and some sort of governance, even if not a government in the traditional sense. But civilization isn't the only thing fans enjoy about these games. These games also feature large-scale conflicts. In Fallout 1, the Master's army is spread all across California. Every town is opposed to them. Same for the Enclave in Fallout 2. And we learn that the NCR has also expanded. In the cancelled Fallout 3 that was being made by Black Isle before Bethesda bought the rights, the NCR was engaged in a war with the Brotherhood of Steel, who had expanded from California to the 4-state Commonwealth. With both factions spread so thin, nobody in the region even knows if the Brotherhood's capital, Lost Hills, is still around. The NCR were also planning to have conflict with the Legion, but they shelved that plotline for their Fallout 4, which is what we see in New Vegas. Now from an overview, these conflicts don't seem like a big deal. However, it's when we ask people in-game about these conflicts that things really open up. I'll use New Vegas as my primary example for this point, as more NPCs are actually aware of the conflict. Every character has their own opinion on the war, more than just this faction good, that faction bad. Characters like Marcus, some random mutant who's completely uninvolved, has extensively studied both the NCR and the Legion. He has a lot of insights and nuanced opinions on each. They both have good, and they both have bad. Even though we as a player can recognize one faction as evil, the people in the universe don't boil it down to just that. Like in real life, we may almost unanimously agree that a certain government is bad, but there are people who will support them anyways. There are reconnaissance missions, skirmishes, battles, wars. It seems like little things, and that's because it is. But when you add in a ton of little things throughout every location, quest, and NPC, these little things really add up. And okay, there's governments and there's war, whatever. Is that all? No! Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas have themes that they follow through on. The iconic line, "War never changes," is meant to represent how humanity is unable to let go of their petty differences and will squabble for bullshit reasons. Often the civilians are the ones who suffer due to the shitty world leaders. The Master follows this theme perfectly. He asked himself, how can we avoid humanity's incessant need to destroy those who differ? How can we change war? And his answer was to try to make everyone the same. The Enclave did the same thing, but inversed. Kill all those who are different. The NCR, Legion, and House are showing that not everyone has learned war never changes, as each power is trying to imitate an old world power. The NCR has all the flaws of America. The Legion has all the flaws of the Roman Empire. House is an egotistical tyrant. The only free New Vegas is an independent one. Yes Man would never fuck up this bad. Anyways, the point is that every faction ties into the theme intentionally. However, in Fallout 3 and 4, the major players don't really abide by this theme. You could perhaps argue the Minutemen and Railroad are mimicking a historical militia in a similar vein to the NCR, but the Minutemen and Railroad don't really have any flaws to flesh them out and tie them into the theme. The Institute doesn't actually have any goals aside from some vague future of humanity that isn't further elaborated on. The Brotherhood is by far the most fleshed out, but I still can't draw any parallels to the core theme of the franchise. New Vegas is largely beloved for another reason most people haven't picked up on. It has more than just one theme. Letting go is a huge theme in the base game and its DLCs. Every companion in the base game and major NPC in the DLCs are holding on to the past and either don't know how to or refuse to let go of it. You could even argue this ties back into the larger theme of war never changes and how the major factions are emulating old world powers. So the NPCs, factions, and plotlines not only have interesting backstories and present stories, but each one also follows two themes simultaneously. It's something you wouldn't notice at first, but it does a lot for the writing of New Vegas and to a slightly lesser extent the first two games. Now I'd be happy to be wrong, but I don't feel as though the Bethesda titles really have themes in their stories that are as intentionally, keyword, intentionally, as the Black Isle titles. Another seemingly small detail is how the Bethesda titles insist on reusing the Brotherhood of Steel for everything, and placing new batches of FEV everywhere, and having new Enclave chapters and Deathclaws. Now you've likely heard all the arguments for their inclusions not making sense in-universe, however, I'd like to instead focus on how these dilute the setting and make each location / the factions and mutants themselves less interesting. What do I mean by that? I mean the Brotherhood and Super Mutants in Fallout 1 and 2 are really cool. They were cool because they were treated as though they were special, precious things. However, Black Isle was going the direction of having them be background factions that might not even appear in a future installment. In Van Buren and New Vegas, we don't even know if Lost Hills is still around. We only see a very small portion of the larger faction in either game. The mutants in New Vegas only live at Black Mountain and Jacobstown and a small group at retcons. Based on how the world is handled in these games, it could be safe to assume that a Black Isle written game in, say, Texas wouldn't feature any Super Mutants or Brotherhood. However, the Bethesda games include them everywhere. In the TV show, we see chapters of the Brotherhood from all over the country. Although the TV show doesn't depict any super mutants, which is strange as California was home to the largest super mutant faction, but whatever. The Brotherhood or super mutants could be replaced with new, unique factions and mutants that could make things more interesting. It's just less interesting to recycle the same handful of things over and over. And again, this applies to the Enclave and Deathclaws as well. I know these things are iconic and people would miss them, but people like me would still prefer to see new things. The final major point I'm going to touch on is consistency in the lore. Everyone should know what I'm referring to, the retcons. 1, 2, and New Vegas don't have a whole lot of retcons, and what retcons they have added to the world rather than took away, like ghouls and super mutants living forever. And to be fair, I think Bethesda also has some good retcons, like ghouls being a universal phenomenon and not just local to Necropolis, the way power armor functions, a lot of the robot redesigns, and definitely more that I can't remember off the top of my head. However, Bethesda titles tend to unintentionally make retcons that at first glance don't mean much, but when you dig deeper, they kinda sucky dinky, that's what it says in my script. Like vertebrates and Exo 1 power armor being pre-war, or at least blueprinted pre-war, ghouls no longer needing water, bottle caps being a universal currency, and many more. I'm not going to delve into each one, but instead focus on the larger whole. These tiny changes do add up. Overall, it makes the setting feel flimsy and malleable. If you go back and play Fallout 1, you'll be thinking, why did the Master focus so much on Mariposa when there are tons of FEV installations throughout the country? Why did he skip over Lucy McLean's vault when searching for pure humans? Why were the ghouls in the Acropolis so focused on keeping their water chip? And then in Fallout 2, you'd be asking, why would the Brotherhood get you to steal vertebrate plans from Navarro? Why would the Mordinos believe Myron invented jet when it's all over the country already? And these are all specific examples, but they contribute to a larger point. A lot of these smaller changes you wouldn't even think about tend to actually render previous important plot lines nonsensical. These retcons take away rather than contribute. Now overall, the Black Isle titles tend to depict a livable world. I could genuinely see myself getting isekai'd into the Black Isle games and living a relatively normal life. In the Bethesda titles, I would die instantly from roving gangs of raiders, bloodthirsty super mutants, and a litany of other things. So that's the meat of the video out of the way. I tried my best to keep this respectful, and I think I've done that. Let me know if parts of this video weren't respectful, and I will rectify this by punishing myself and humiliating myself for your entertainment. I know I could have probably explained my points better. I'm still an amateur, and I may redo this video at a later point in time. But I love all of you, except for base Eastern Fallout handsome kid. I don't know who the fuck you think you are, but you're gonna suffer, you son of a bitch. I hope I've given Bethesda fans some perspective on where fans like me are coming from, and I don't anticipate other people are going to go down the Fallout pipeline like I did, but if we can disagree with each other with civility, then I'll have achieved what I wanted. Because it's totally cool to like the Bethesda games and the TV show. I still play Fallout 4 to this day, plan on catching up with the 76 updates and playing Fallout 3 when it gets remastered. It's just that I'm always right, and I hope you can finally understand. My next video essay will be about the most breedable mommies of New Vegas, so be on the lookout for that. Peace, y'all.